Hey y'all, what's up? It's Alex here, and I am so excited to talk about today's topic. Earth Day is coming up on April 22nd, and it has been one of my favorite days since I was a kid. Now, we all know the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle. But I propose a fourth: read. After all, the more informed we are about different topics regarding our environment, the more capable we are of coming together to solve the most pressing issues. This video will be split up into 4 parts: fiction recommendation, non-fiction, poetry, and a section I'm calling For the Child Within You. It's a children's book recommendation, but if you're an adult, you may find it fun too. Number 1 is Ishmael by Quinn. You may have read this book back in high school English class, or maybe you were lucky enough to find it in the wild. Either way, this is a must read. It had such a profound emotional impact on me that I bring it everywhere I move to. So this story starts out with an unnamed narrator finding an ad from a teacher seeking a pupil, and that teacher happens to be a gorilla named Ishmael. Through a series of questions and answers, we embark on this journey of what it means to be a weaver and a taker, and the depth that the human race plays in the natural world. For anyone who wants to get a start into philosophical books, this is definitely a great beginner-friendly book for that. The next fiction book recommendation I have for you is Dry by Neal and Jarrod Shusterman. I read this book about a year and a half ago, and I literally could not put it down. It's essentially a climate thriller that hits a little too close to home. This novel explores the scary idea of what would happen if we ran out of water, specifically in California. It is split up into 6 parts, and I'm going to read out what those 6 parts are. Number 1 is called Tap Out, 2 is 3 Days to Animal, 3 The Chasm Between, 4 Bug Out, 5 Hell and High Water, and 6 A New Normal. So you can already kind of get a sense of where the climax and the highs and lows of the story will be within this book. It is dedicated to all of those struggling to undo the disastrous effects of climate change. Given this and the fact that the characters are in their late teens, this is a YA novel, but I was a young adult when I read this. It was only a year and a half ago, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. The book is also written from several different main character perspectives, but we also have these what they call snapshots from other perspectives of different people living in the town, and these tend to be in 3rd person while the main characters tend to be in 1st person, which I really liked because it gives us not only what our characters are thinking as we're reading, but it also gives us a bigger overview picture of some of these other people that are more experienced in life than our characters are. The bulk of today's recommendations are non-fiction books, and actually this first non-fiction recommendation is a collection of 20 books. Yep, you heard me right. The collection is called Green Ideas by Penguin, and it comes in a nice box set. The books are a little out of order, so the colors are out of order as well, but here's what the set looks like. Here's the back. It has the authors as well as the topics that they talk about. This collection is comprised of 20 small books that are essentially articles, essays, and parts of larger works from different figureheads within the environmental space. I think this collection is great for somebody just getting into environmental studies, as well as for people who've been in it a while. This makes a great gift. In fact, this was one of my Christmas gifts a couple of years ago for my parents. I haven't read the whole collection, but I have gotten through a good amount of these books, and they are pretty digestible, at least the ones I've read so far, and I've been able to complete a good amount of them in one sitting. One of my favorite books that I've read so far from this collection is number 12, The World We Once Lived In by Wangari Maathai. And this book essentially talks about our connection with trees and the power that they have. And I wanted to read an excerpt from page 48 for you guys.
One aspect of a love of nature that we need to foster is experiential. Nature, and in particular, the wild, feeds our spirit, and a direct encounter with it is vital in helping us appreciate and care for it. For unless we see it, smell it, or touch it, we tend to forget it and our souls wither. In many ways, this search for the wild is an attempt to heal the disease we all live with, since none of us is immune to the effects of environmental degradation or diminishment of the natural world.
You may have heard the next author that I'm about to pull out from this box set, and her name is Robin Wall Kimmerer. She's the author of Braiding Sweetgrass, which I have not read yet, but it's on my list of things to read this year. And she has a book on here, it's number 10, called The Democracy of Species, where she talks a little bit about animacy, and I wanted to read an excerpt from this as well.
Imagine walking through a richly inhabited world of birch people, bear people, rock people, beings we think of and therefore speak of as persons worthy of our respect, of inclusions in a peopled world. We Americans are reluctant to learn a foreign language of our own species, let alone another species, but imagine the possibilities.
Another one I wanted to highlight is All Art is Ecological by Timothy Morton, and this is number 3 of the collection. Timothy Morton actually has the title of Philosopher Prophet of the Anthropocene, which I felt like I had to share because I think that is the coolest thing ever.
Actual beauty has a Christmas tree effect. There is a greasy pathway towards kitsch, in which we become aware of beauty's disgust fringe. There's more subsident beauty than normalized beauty can cope with. And when I talk about art, it is not just as a metaphor for us to understand the quality of existence. The subsident nature of art means that ecological art that calls itself as such can't be about Sierra Club styling, uplifting, poster-type grandeur. It must include ugliness and disgust and haunting weirdness and a sense of unreality as much as of reality. And in turn, ecological awareness can't just be pure and pristine and holy.
If there's one book you take away from today's list of recommendations, make it be this one, The Story of Us by Annie Leonard. How our obsessions with stuff is trashing the planet, our communities, and our health, and a vision for change. Let me just read the insert here for you.
We have a problem with stuff. With just 5% of the world's population, we're consuming 30% of the world's resources and creating 30% of the world's waste. If everyone consumed at U.S. rates, we would need 3 to 5 planets. Like Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, The Story of Stuff is a landmark book that will change the way people think and the way they live. Truth.
This book is filled with so much information that it will leave you with a ton of questions, and specifically questioning about your life and your own decisions, but for the better. There is one message that truly comes out of this book, and that is that we need to change the paradigm. And this is specifically referencing how GDP may not be the best indicator for a country's overall progress. I really appreciate how in this book that there are some little illustrations along the way, specifically ones that highlight hope and ones that are used to highlight alternative solutions that the author provides. I find that when you're reading something like this, where it can feel a little tough and it makes you question your environment and your life choices up until now, like, it is good to be provided with a little cute illustration that says, hey, wait a minute, there is hope here, something is being done, or something can be done, and hey, here's an alternative solution to what we're doing now that could be beneficial for everybody. And so I really did appreciate the inclusion of that, because it's not all doom and gloom. There is a lot of hope out there. So last year I became really interested in environmental writing, and I also was in Barnes & Noble, and I saw this beautiful cover. Look at it. This is Writing Wild by Kathryn Aalto. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And this book talks about 25 influential women writers that write about nature, so from poets to scientists, and all in between. And you might recognize some of the people talked about in this book. We have Rachel Carson, Mary Oliver, and Robin Wall Kimmerer, just to name a few. I adore how this book is written and illustrated. Here is an example. This is Mary Oliver's section. We get a little illustration of the person that is being talked about, as well as a snippet from one of their works. And then the author has a nice introduction for them, talking about their life and their process even. Some of them, like Mary Oliver's, have more experts at their work, and so I shall read one from Mary Oliver. It wouldn't be a good environmental life video if I didn't read this poem, which is called The Summer Day.
Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last, and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?
I love that poem every time I read it. And what I also like about this book is at the end of each person section we get either more works from that author. In some sections we'll get additional artists and writers who write about similar topics as well. And even if you're not a writer, this book will open up your eyes and your souls to a plethora of environmental works across several disciplines that may interest you, and it may just inspire you to pick up your pen and spend some more time outdoors. To finish off the nonfiction section, I present to you The Spell of the Sensuous and Becoming Animal, both by David Abram. Now, when I read both of these books, they were pretty hard to get through. They are really dense and super philosophical, so if that's something that you struggle with, it might be a difficult read for you, but fear not, because even I was able to gain some new knowledge from these, and I found these works absolutely enchanting, and the prose is just beautiful. The imagery is beautiful, even though sometimes I may not have understood it. It was enchanting, nevertheless. So The Spell of the Sensuous forces us to tap into our senses, obviously. But my favorite part about this book was learning about language, specifically the alphabet. More specifically, our alphabet, English speakers. He talks a lot about how in way back when, start of the human civilization, human race, language was very connected to nature. A lot of the characters or pictographs that you would see, or even sounds that you would hear, came from the local natural environment. But now you see that our alphabet, it doesn't really connect to the environment at all. And he argues about how this could be one of the ways that is impacting our connection with nature, and why we become so disconnected, is we've kind of forced ourselves to be this otherworldly entity that isn't a part of our local community at all. Becoming Animal is about, you guessed it, going back into our animal selves again. To be honest, I don't remember a lot about what this book was about. I felt like it was a little harder to get into and to understand than the previous one, but there was a page that has stuck with me since I read it, and that is the last page of a chapter titled Death.
The air is not a random bunch of gases simply drawn to Earth by the Earth's gravity, but an elixir generated by the soils, the ocean, and the numberless organisms that inhabit this world, each creature exchanging certain ingredients for others as it inhales and exhales, drinking the sunlight with our leaves or filtering the water with our gills, all of us contributing to the composition of this phantasmagoric brew, circulating it steadily between us and nourishing ourselves on its magic, generating ourselves from its substance. It is as endemic to the Earth as a sandstone beneath my boots. Perhaps we should add the letter I to our planet's name and call it the Earth, in order to remind ourselves that the air is entirely a part of the Earth, and the I or self, is wholly immersed in that fluid element. And we, imbibing and strolling through the same air, do not then live on the Earth, but in it. We are enfolded within it, permeated, carnally immersed in the depths of this breathing planet.
Whew. I remember reading this page and having to sit with myself for a few moments, because it's such beautiful prose, but also such a beautiful message as well. Now onto poetry recommendations. Last Earth Day I had the absolute pleasure of reading Oceanic by Aimee Nezhukumatathil. I feel like I butchered her last name, but you may recognize her name, as she is pretty proficient in writing about the natural world, the ocean, the environment, and all that jazz. A lot of the poems in this collection are very clearly inspired by the sea. The first poem that we get is called Self-Portrait as Scallop. You kind of see that the structure of this poem almost looks like a scallop or a clam jumping, flying through the water. Each break is kind of like them. I don't know if you've seen a jumping clam in the water. That's what this reminds me of.
So I did want to share with you guys one of her poems called Invitation, because I This is probably my favorite out of the whole collection. So it says, come in, the water's fine. You can't get lost here. Even if you wanted to hide behind a clutch of spiny oysters, I'll find you. If you ever leave me at night by boat, you'll see the arrangement of golden sun stars in a sea of milk. And though it's tempting to visit them, stay. I've been trained to look up and up all my life, no matter the rumble on earth, but I've learned it's okay to glance down once in a while into the sea. So many lessons bubble up if you just know where to look. Clouds of plankton, hurricaning, and open whale mouths will send you east, and chewy urchins will slide you west. Squid know how to be rich with 10 empty arms. There are humans who don't know the feel of a good bite or embrace at least once a day. Underneath you, narwhals spin upside down while their singular tooth needles you like a compass pointed towards home. Deep where imperial volutes and hatchetfish live, colors humans have not yet named glow in caves made from black coral and clamshell. A giant squid finally lets itself be captured in a photograph, and the paper nautilus ripple flashes scarlet, and two kinds of violet when it silvers your near. Who knows what will happen next? If you still want to look up, I hope you see the dark sky as oceanic, boundless, limitless. Like all the shades of blue revealed in a glacier, let's listen how this planet hums with so much wing, fur, and fin.
Absolutely gorgeous poem, and that is by far my favorite out of the whole collection. It just reminds me, the reader, to look at the world. Don't just keep looking in our phones, looking up at the sky. There is a whole plethora of animals and life forms beneath the ocean and on top of the ocean. There's other poems in this collection that also may not sound like they relate to the ocean. We have Letter to the Northern Lights, and When Riding an Elephant, I think of unicorns, and also she has these poems, one-star review of the Great Wall of China, and one-star review of Taj Mahal, which are interesting and fun to read as well. Next in poetry, I am calling all my fellow ocean lovers, mermaids, and seafarers. You have to read with me, because I have not yet read it yet. I've only skimmed it. This little anthology called Poems of the Sea. It is edited by Gabby Morgan, and it is literally the size of my hand.
Poems of the Sea is a rich celebration of crashing waves and rugged coastlines, of seafaring people, of ships and boats, and the joy of the day at the seaside. From traditional sea shanties to the powerful poetry of Tennyson and nonsense rhymed by Edward Weir, this exhilarating collection captures the timeless allure of the sea.
Now, I've only read a few poems in this book so far, and I've skimmed through the rest of it. Now, a lot of the poems seem to be from 1600s, 1700s, 1800s time frame. Some of these poems are definitely sea shanties, which some of them you may have heard at the beginning of the pandemic when everybody was obsessed with sea shanties. And others are poems like She sells seashells at the seashore. That's in here. You also get some really gorgeous poems, and I wanted to read one of those today for you.
On page 27, we have the poem called Seashell by Aimee. She lived from 1874 to 1925. Seashell, seashell, sing me a song, oh please, a song of ships and pirate men and parrots and tropical trees, of islands lost in the Spanish Main, with no man may ever find again, of fishes and corals under the waves, and seahorses stabled in great green caves. Seashell, seashell, sing of the things you know so well.
Last, but certainly not least, let's talk about a recommendation for children, but also those of us in our heart. I mean, don't lie to me. If you saw this in a store, you would be drawn to it too. It's here, let me show you. Pop up and things to touch and like envelopes, stuff to pull out and stuff, and it didn't even faze me that this was a children's book.
So this book is supposedly the diary of one Zodicus de Lesseps, who is documenting his journey with the Nautilus, which is essentially submarine. And he joins Captain Nemo, which you may recognize from Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which you do not need to know Captain Nemo or 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I didn't know. I haven't read that yet. But you don't need to know it in order to enjoy it. Although if you do know it, it might make this book that much more enjoyable for you to skim through.
So the book mixes myth and fiction with actual facts about the ocean and the animals within it, and those tend to be written in non-italics, while the rest of the story is written in italics to make you see the difference. I included this book here today because, one, for kids, it introduces them to the wonders of our ocean specifically, both real and mythological. And two, for adults, it reminds us about how vast and exciting the ocean is and how we as humans have had a connection with the ocean throughout time, and a lot of our mythology is based around it. And there you have it. Those were 10 books and collections that you can read not only on this Earth Day, but should read whenever you want to learn more about our blue and green home. Do you have additional recommendations for books either that are fiction, poetry, children's, or nonfiction regarding any topic about the environment? Let me know in the comments down below. I would love for the comment section to become a repository for all of us to find new and exciting works about the environment. Thanks so much for watching and interacting with this video, and don't forget this Earth Day and every day to reduce, reuse, recycle, and read.